All right, we're here. We're back with the Human Game podcast. We haven't done a podcast in a minute, and it was because of being too perfectionistic. And so, what I'm starting, here's my intention with the new chapter of the podcast is we're just going to come on here and not give a about what it looks like, what the this or that, because that's been kind of an issue for me is that I'm thinking too much about shit that doesn't matter. So what you're gonna see with the podcast moving forward, just want to let you know, is we're just gonna get on here and talk about different things, and I'm gonna do it very often. So you can expect a lot more episodes of the Human Game on a variety of topics. And today we're actually gonna start with one of my favorite things to do, and that is a Q&A. So I'm here with Cleburn, who is my favorite regular of the podcast, an absolute legend. And I asked him, bro, do you want to get into a little bit of maybe some politics? I haven't really talked about politics yet, and trust me, I know a lot about it, a lot. So it's just time for me to fucking start talking about it. So that's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna answer just a fucking lot of questions because I like Q&As. I just did the level up challenge, and we had 4 Q&As, and I just realized I thrive in the environment of Q&As. So yeah, we asked. So where we got the questions from is we asked, both of us did, asked on our stories on Instagram, what are some questions that you have for us? And so Clayburn put politics in his question, like asked me about it. I did not. So it's going to be a variety. But I actually kind of want to start with whatever you think one of the better questions is on your end. So let's get into politics, and then we'll kind of fucking take it wherever it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. All
How are
right.
you today, lad? First of all,
You know what? I'm feeling oddly like good. Like
oddly good.
yeah, I don't know why, but it felt like yesterday, like inexplicably a cloud moved out of the way, which is
Mm-hmm.
funny because like the actual weather is a bit more cloudy and fall like around here, but it just felt like energetically like a weight just got off my freaking back. You know what I mean? Again, inexplicably, there's nothing that has happened in my material world that would lead me to feel one way or the other, but just feeling much lighter. And if anybody's like big in astrology, it may be because like I'm a cardinal sign, I'm a Libra, and the whole Pluto shifting out of a whatever 16-year karmic cycle, maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
part of it, whatever. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but feeling great. And yeah,
Nice.
I got some great questions. Before I get into it, for the most part, I'm gonna like just assume like I'm gonna put out of my mind that this is a podcast and other people are gonna hear it. And I'm just here shooting the shit with my buddy Nick, which will let me be more honest about stuff that I know will like maybe sound controversial as we get into some of the specifics. But before we start, I just want to mention the note that I sent you yesterday, and ended up sharing it in my Instagram story last night. But the reason why most people get so worked up when they talk about like politics or economics or things that seem like it has like these big concept type of topics, the reason they get so triggered is, as we all know, the body's chemical processes can't tell the difference between something that is happening and the brain pulls that data in and forms an image of it, or something the brain just imagines. Whether it's really happening or being imagined, the body reacts the same. The chemical processes are the same. So when people are having a discussion and their brain is moving through all these if this then that's, and they're thinking, well, if this person's president, if this person goes to war, if this person, you know, uh, is my partner who's a bad partner, or whatever it is, as they're thinking through all these scenarios, and it's forming the body's reacting like it's real. And if somebody doesn't have the emotional and spiritual maturity to regulate their emotions very well in real time, then they'll never be able to have these conversations, because as soon as they touch the first topic, the body goes into this like urgent fight or flight type of chemical process. And that's why people, you know, we see this all the time. People start the conversation, it's a running joke that every family at Thanksgiving time at some point the family's going to erupt in some sort of like you know, opposition regarding these type of topics.
Mm-hmm.
um and that is in theory the genius of what America was supposed to be founded on. Like, hey, we've had a king, and now we're here having some sovereignty, and things aren't perfect, but we don't need your lordship anymore. We're going to stand in our own sovereignty, and if you don't like it, fuck you. You know what I mean?
Fuck
So
you.
come and do
It's a
something
big
about it.
ol' fuck.
Yeah. come and do something about it, king. See what happens. You know what I mean? So that
Literally.
is effectively what all of America is supposed to be founded on. I am choosing my sovereignty above everything else. And from here, we can grow. And rule number one, the First Amendment, right? Like the ability to have discourse, the ability to bring multiple concepts and ideas and complaints to the table and work them through without getting pushed into some sense of urgency that leads to unnecessary conflict, right? Uh, Sovereignty, discourse. That's supposed to be what founded this nation and what called in this whole democratic experiment that's never existed really in humankind. That's supposed to be what started this. And now we're getting to a point where all the stuff we're going to talk about, but just want to restart by saying that's where we're supposed to start. Sovereignty, regulating our emotions enough to navigate conversations because we're here having a conversation. Nothing's really happening yet until an action is taken. For right now, we have all the time we want to discuss, to work through, to literally be little simulation robots that just like run through every scenario before we actually take some action and make something happen.
Hmm. And I think part of that is getting people's nervous system so wrecked that
Yeah.
they can't really make a non-emotional decision. And
Yeah.
then they're making decisions based on anger, not logic.
Right.
Or especially in if we're talking about politics, especially in politics, that's a big problem. Is I think I know because I've been convinced by my certain narrative source that this is correct. But then when I'm put up against another idea, it feels like death if I'm wrong because my
Mhm.
identity is attached to
Boom.
that
Yeah.
specific ideal. So then I that's why it's like, can you even be willing to be wrong?
See,
That's
the
the
identity
idea.
the identity part is the main aspect. People's identity is wrapped up in these external ideas and these people that are their champion or their enemy because they're not fully standing in their own sovereignty. They have outsourced parts of themselves, either knowingly or unknowingly, and they are choosing a champion. Yeah, here's this person that's going to stick up and attempt to impose my will on everybody else who doesn't agree with me, right? Or they're the person who's attempting to oppose the will that I don't agree with on me. So I hate them. And I maybe even hate all the people who support them because I view them as a threat. So yeah,
I
it's
mean,
outsourcing sovereignty.
both sides right now are this person's a threat to democracy. And so it's like the same thing playing out.
Yeah.
The kind of
Yeah.
radicalization of honestly both sides is what we're seeing.
Yeah.
But what do you got for questions?
I'll start with the most recent one I got, which I feel like was a leading question. Like I think they had their own answer in mind, but it was a pretty good one anyways. The most recent one I got says, does voting in this election elect you into the duality and fuel the machine more? What do you think about that?
Literally one of the hardest questions.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest questions in existence right now.
Right.
So like, are they playing a game? The question to me is, are they playing a game? And if I decide to play the game by choosing a specific side, is that like putting me more into that perpetuating that game?
That's the question. And I would have to where I'm at, that's what I feel is happening, right? Like yeah, we're all coming into agreement of this Super Bowl of a game of entertainment where we not only outsource our sovereignty, we form our identities around these icons that are brought up onto these platforms, and they serve as a mirror of the collective subconscious that they represent. Like if whether whatever we think of right now, it's Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, whatever we think of them, they are the honest reflection of our collective subconscious, of this ridiculous duality system and of people outsourcing their sovereignty. And going to vote in it does reinforce that versus, like I said, the founding fathers who declared independence and said, you're probably going to come kill us because England is the biggest empire and biggest military in the world, and we're a bunch of colonists out here. making our way, trying to figure out what's up and see if there's harmony to be had amongst the natives and all this stuff. But whatever, they said, yeah, we're not gonna pay you any tax and we're not gonna do what you say. There's a system in mind that doesn't exist yet, so we're forming it into mind. And they were willing to say we can't go back to what has been because we have a glimpse of something different and better, and we are standing in our sovereignty. So our political system as it is, which if we zoom out far enough, is not bad. It is good, right? Like, I mean, if we think about the ways in which people have lived throughout all of human history, where we're at right now is not bad. And it's just a consequence of our desire to evolve and improve and expand rather than stagnate. Like the Amish next to you building a house. We can get back to that. But we could stay the same and find a homeostasis and never change, but we want to evolve and improve. And with that comes a process of improvement, right? So we're in the middle of that. But all that to say, voting in the election um, is an outsource of someone's sovereignty and at a spiritual level, at a level of someone's own unawareness of themselves being one and the same with the creator, is where that stems from. If somebody was standing fully in their Christ consciousness, in their knowing, in their embodiment of the highest version of truth of who they are, if they just refused to be shaken out of that and they stayed there until eventually they bumped into someone else in their orbit that's kind of in the same energy and sees things the same way, before long, you will have a whole lot of people that are existing so sovereignly, yet still so collectively conscious, right? Like the servant leader archetype. There would be so many people like that that the concept of politics would go back to effectively what it is, which is civil servants, people who among the group say, all of us can sort of take care of ourselves. And as we're splitting up duties, somebody's job is to be the spokesperson for the group for these kind of next tier matters. But as it stands, it really is a system of outsourcing sovereignty, um, and almost avoiding one's own inner work is what it is. So yeah, I think right now voting is just perpetuating a system that people love to bitch about, especially extra bitch about it once every 4 years, and then they just kind of go back to him hawing around for the next 3.5 years till there's another election campaign where everybody says, pay attention and do this and get really concerned about this.
Damn. Very interesting. Well, before I go on my tangent,
Do
it
it.
looks like your fucking laptop is like focusing and you're blurry. You know what I mean? Like it's focusing on your laptop, so turn it a little bit more towards you. I think that's better. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what I mean? Like if you have something closer than you,
Yeah,
because your camera's that good. Let's
maybe,
see.
maybe not.
No, that's better. Yeah, perfect.
All right, there we go.
Okay, cool. So this is a really tough question. I do genuinely think this is one of the hardest questions somebody can ask
Right.
because it's if I see the system that is the idea of the system is a good idea, but the way that it's being used is corrupted. Do you
Hmm.
continue to participate in that system? And does non-participation result in actual change? And it's almost as though what where I'm at is it's only when you have enough people in non-participation of that game that
Hmm.
and then they decide to play another game that that game becomes irrelevant. But can you really do that on this massive a scale? You know, or can, it would take a shit ton of people saying, "Okay, we don't even want to play your game anymore. Let's go build our own game and play our own game."
Right.
That's a really difficult one.
What you just said though was a big part of the that's the can you do it regardless of if you are the only one in the world? If you feel it is the absolute truth, would you do it if it put you at odds with everyone else in the world? And that's a tough one because we prefer the safety of numbers and we prefer to blend in with the group, which is how that can be highly weaponized. And in our generation, we saw that in 2020, right? Like people were a lot more middle of the road regarding the masks and the vaccines and a lot of stuff going on that year. But because there was a hard line drawn in the sand and everybody had to pick a side, they just kind of clumped in with the side that put them in a group. Um, that's how like Nazis could have existed, right? It generated momentum into a movement, and then somebody had to decide to be part of the group or not. Speaking of that,
Hmm.
if you've ever seen that famous picture, there's like at a Nazi rally, and everybody's doing the salute except the one guy standing there with his arms crossed. Um, to some point, that is the hero's journey. At some point, we all have to, within our own, within the wilderness of our soul and our own consciousness, we have to really be certain on what is the absolute truth that we know, regardless of anybody else's validation or argument. And are we willing to stand in that unwaveringly? And can that still be done while still respecting everybody else's free will equally? That is the ultimate challenge. That's the ultimate hero's journey, to disregard the group if needs be. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, first off, we're also on Fluffy Tube, so be careful in terms of coding
Oh yeah,
words
yeah,
because there's certain words that it's ridiculous that we have to do this, but it is what it is. So just remember that so that we can make sure that this goes up and has a great time, that it's good.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I have an answer to this question. I don't know if I know the answer to this. This is something that I still struggle with. And I think the ideal situation is that we all look at each other and be like, okay, we're not going to participate in this anymore. And then everybody does it at once, and then it would work. But it's like the thing that I struggle with is if you do non-participation and it's you're only a couple of people, does it do more harm than good if there's like a better choice that's being offered out of two?
that,
But
that gets
then,
rep yeah, that gets represented in the where there's a third party candidate, and that usually disrupts it's better when there's two, and then when there's a third option, it ends up pulling just enough people to sort of mess up the person who would have won. Um,
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. So I kind of want to leave it at that because I don't even know.
yeah,
Like if there's a good answer, and I know a lot of things. I know a lot of things, but this one, it's a tough call. I would
yeah,
say use your own discernment, what feels right
yeah.
within yourself.
But
Imagine someone answering something and not being like, "This is what you need to do." It's like unheard of in today's day and age. Discern it
yeah,
within yourself. When was the last time you heard somebody of authority be like, "Feel that one out yourself"? It just doesn't happen very often. It's
right,
interesting to think about.
yeah.
But what other questions you
Um,
got?
let's see here. And yeah, moving forward, I will be happy to like say it from a way where it's like my actual like Cleburne's opinions on Trump and Kamala, or how I see it playing out, or who has strengths and weaknesses pertaining to the job at hand. But at the largest level, it's all about the individual's refusal to outsource their sovereignty or be moved from what they think is the highest truth. Is their identity tied up in someone else as their champion? Or is their identity tied up in knowing that they've already been? It's convenient if somebody's had one of those like out of bodies where they've left, they've gone past this, and it's like they're back for a second time, and just looking at everything in hindsight as it's playing out. Anyways, next question. Let's see. How would you describe 2024 in 3 words? Came and went. Dude, how is it already like November of 2024? Um, how to know who to vote for when politics are filled with hate. Is there even a good choice? Um,
Okay, we can
well,
answer that. I think that if you are going to vote, then it would be looking at actions more than words.
yeah.
I think at the end of the day, we have to be grounded enough to say who
Mhm.
has a actual record of accomplishing things.
It's
Who who has
exactly. I agree entirely. It's Yeah,
Yeah.
moving the emotions out of the way. And, and the
Nope.
as their track record of sees they've been, for this job, it's literally somebody who's you have to act like you're the employer, and somebody's, you're reviewing their resume, and this whole thing is an interview process where they're interviewing with their boss, the American people, to see who's a candidate. Are you willing to just immediately vote blue no matter who? Are you willing to pick the person that you think looks the most like you? Well, their skin color and their genitalia is the same as mine, so I'm going with them. That's dumb as fuck. You know what I mean? If anybody's unaware, if you don't know that picking a person based on how closely their skin color and their junk matches yours, that's stupid. Um, but
I
by all
agree.
means, if that's the level you're at, then that's where you're at, and that's the reflection you get back from the candidates you see, people that piss you off, because one of them has different genitalia,
It's
and they're a
ridiculous.
threat.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that the idea of not picking people based on how good they are at something, I think that's just stupid.
Yeah,
Like you have to pick somebody who is going to be the best at what they do.
right.
I think that it should just be a human trait that we don't really get rid of. I mean, like, why would you not pick the person who's best or what they're doing? I mean, it's like
Right.
the idea that one of the airlines announced that they were only going to hire certain pilots based on the way that they, what race they are. It's like ridiculousness. It's like, dude,
So that is institutional racism, right? And
right.
to pick and decide when it's okay, as long as the group deciding is in agreement that the people being favored or uh, excommunicated are just whatever happens to be the agreement at that time. It's still institutional racism, right? You guys have had it, you guys are getting preferential treatment. You guys are not. That's we're supposed to be beyond that, right?
Mhm.
And as far as I can tell, there is nobody truly in this country in America that's limited based on any sort of definition or category they may fall under, right? Like we've had tremendously successful people and tremendously underperforming portions of the population from whichever gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, all that kind of stuff, right? There have been all kinds of people up to and including the president, um, that represent a whole mix of possibilities. So nobody's really limited too much in this country anymore.
I think it's such a victim move. Like, okay, let me even go back before I say that. To perpetuate the victim narrative is to perpetuate your own disempowerment.
Yeah,
And the victim narrative of kind of what you're speaking on, and in general, that these things happen to me and therefore this.
yeah.
I think this is actually a great thing to talk about because I think most people don't understand this to this level. The level I understand it, because I understand it way more than anybody has ever understood it. Trust me. They don't understand like karma. They don't understand the idea that you chose a certain life path and they want it to be equal. But I think that they're not understanding that there's a soul's journey and we choose into our experience. We choose into how hard our life is. And I'm actually at the point where I'm fucking grateful how difficult my life has been in some ways. And I know there's always going to be people out there that had it worse than me. I get it. I get it. But I started from the fucking bottom as well. I get it. I think that the feeling that you, no matter where you're at, are being asked to level up. Everything that is happening in your life is training so that you can be the most adaptable version of yourself. And I actually wrote something down the other day about this. It's not about having the perfect environment. It's being, okay, it's not about having the perfect environment. It's about being perfectly adaptable to your environment. Because the true hero can be in any situation and fucking elevate and fucking be playing the game at a high level. And I think that the universe is intelligent enough to put us all in situations to which is perfect for us at our own evolution, which then results in an opportunity for us to continue to play the game or begin to play the game at a higher level. It's as though it's the victim narrative is thinking that we are supposed to be given traits, not developed traits. And it's negating the idea that life is meant to be a conduit for you to develop skills and traits to be able to, as Nietzsche would say, self-overcome, to overcome obstacles in your life and to realize that that in itself is inherently a big part of what life is meant to be. One where you start at a certain point physically, just like any fucking video game. You start in Goldshire in World of Warcraft, and you end up in the Burning Crusade fighting demons. Well, first you got to get to level 70 before you fight the demons, right? So that's the idea we see throughout politics too. Is and I'm weaving here, right?
You gotta weave. You gotta weave.
We're weaving.
If
That
anybody,
comes it
that was
full
one of the best.
circles,
Real quick,
right?
if anybody hasn't seen that 3 hour long session of fucking Trump talking about how he likes to weave topics, and then Joe's like, "You got a wide weave, buddy. We got to bring it back."
I'm bringing it back.
That was just hilarious that he said that to
I
a phone.
know.
uh, anyways,
Well, Joe has just as much power or very similar power to the president. I mean, I don't think he looks at him with that level of respect because he realizes the level of um
yeah,
the level that he's at in himself. He like understands him as like an equal.
this what I'm talking about, like sovereignty, right? Like in a follow-up episode, like the next day, Joe's chatting about it with his buddies, and clearly he like respects him enough to like, like call them sir, is pretty courteous, but also when he's on the podcast, he's not there to kiss his ass or prop him up or be his opponent or anything. Like you said, just have a chat like a human being. And that who is Joe Rogan, right? Like he's a freaking meathead who has a background as a competitive martial artist who's been in Hollywood, which is performing, who was one of the first mainstream advocates for like psilocybin and DMT and psychedelic journeying, right? So he's this kind of odd combination of a dude who's like seems to be pretty comfortable in his own little space while also appreciating people for who they are, whether they're exactly the same as him or not. So he can get away with developing to that podcast based on the generally consistent way he treats the array of personalities he interacts with. You know what I mean? So anyways, him being able to shoot the shit with President Trump, I have a feeling that will and should be part of the way it goes from now on, where if you know what I mean, like imagine a job interview and you're like, the job that I'm hiring you for is to run this country, which your two main jobs is to honor our sovereignty and handle our foreign diplomacy, right? Like oversee our economy and handle our standings and our respectability amongst other people who might be inclined to wage war against us or take advantage of us, right? How can I trust you? A 3 hour conversation where somebody sits down without prompts, without support, without all that kind of stuff, and just has a chat to where you can kind of get a feel for them. I hope that becomes a much more standardized part of the election process across the board, where we get to just sit and like watch somebody, see how their brain works, see how they talk, see how they handle themselves in real time at the one-on-one human level, not on the I'm in front of a teleprompter and I'm heavily campaigning a pre-described script here.
100%, bro. Let me fucking finish that weave. And I actually want to talk about what you're talking about as
Okay.
well. The victim narrative comes across when Tony Hinchcliffe makes the jokes and everybody's like, "Oh my God, he made a joke and it was too much." Like, you can't joke about that. shut your bitch ass up. It's so stupid to me that there's so many people out there that are so caught up in the seriousness of the game that they're not even willing to joke about it. We can't even talk a little bit of shit. And I see that even with people in my own family. Like they're very, very serious, and they also don't want to they don't want to talk shit. And where that comes across as a victim is it's like, oh well, you're a victim of his joke, or like if T-Man is talking that shit about someone, and then like they take it to this personal point where I've heard people say, I don't want to vote for somebody because they're mean.
Right.
And it's
I,
like, that's an emotional decision.
right.
That's, if you're looking at track records, that's an emotional decision for sure. That's where we want to avoid, is being in
So this
positions like that.
the Hinchcliffe, I actually saw that part, that the Tony Hinchcliffe joke about Puerto Ricans and stuff, and I did find it to be distasteful. Like it wasn't funny to me, right? I was like, oh, fucking dumbass. But he is a stand-up comedian attempting to crack jokes in a place where he also, as a human, had a job to do, and he stands up and he's like, holy shit, I was just playing at a club the other day, and now I'm in front of all these people at a Trump rally. What do I say? What do I do? Is this going to land? You know what I mean? He's a human being also doing the best he can, as we all are, to sort of go through what he's doing. So there's always grace, but it was not the best joke. It wasn't that funny. Could have got Dave
Well, I
Chappelle.
think that's
Could have got Dave
irrelevant.
Chappelle. Right, it's irrelevant. But what I'm saying is the fact that maybe it wasn't like Dave Chappelle can drop some jokes in that same sort of energy, and it's like a little better, right? Like it's a little higher tier delivery. So his joke, the reason I think people got rattled is it circles back to the inner work they're not doing, which leads to a lot of outsourcing, and the fact that they're moving from a place of unawareness of their own divine sovereignty and moving from a place of fear. So the people who heard the joke and got highly triggered, they are afraid that it's true that this whole Trump party and all these people deep down think very derogatively about them, right? That they really think this is a body of people who are the enemy that want to come after them. And then there's other people that are making a bigger deal out of it to, to try to influence the people who would be inclined to think that way, because it's pretty obvious that Kamala is backed by a lot of people that seem to have vested interests in her winning. And it's fun to talk about all the Diddy tapes and all the
Yeah,
connections that people have to
everybody has fucking vested interest in people winning. It's like, but who are the people though?
right.
The fact that you're having all these celebrities all come out for one candidate, it's not even like there's a couple here, a couple there. You
Right.
gotta ask yourself the question, why are they all for this one? And it's not,
Mhm.
is it policy based? Is it
Yeah.
really? Well, we see Zach Levi coming out and talking that he's voting for Trump, which was, I think, an interesting one. And
Uh-huh.
um, to circle back to the Hinchcliffe real quick, to me, the ridiculousness was when I'm seeing comments, that just did it for me. I'm voting blue now. I mean, and we're seeing 10,000 likes on those comments. The fact that a comedian makes a joke, even if it is a bad joke,
Bots.
but that is going to make that's going to determine who you're going to vote for just because you don't like someone's joke.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
ridiculousness.
Could be
That's
bots.
It could be bots. I would like to think that it's not. I am actually 100% on board with you. The truth of social media is we don't even know if any of these comments are real. We
Yeah.
don't know if any of the comments are real. We don't know if any of the comment likes are real. We could just all be in fucking echo chambers thinking that we have a bunch of people that agree with us when in fact we have none that
Yeah.
agree with us. And so we can't rely on outside sources to determine this is what people are thinking, because numbers can get boosted anywhere. So the level of discernment that's needed in today's day and age, especially coming into November here, is out of this world, because also I think these algorithms are specifically promoting
Yeah.
certain things because, well,
That's their job. That's their
it is
job, to
their
show you the content to show you the content that they think you will consume. Now, are
Yeah.
you somebody who has told the algorithm, I am more likely to consume things I agree with and that I enjoy, or am I more likely to stop and consume things that enrage me? Do I gravitate and stick more to frustration and opposition, or do I stick more to alignment? So you're either getting an echo chamber of fear or an echo chamber of like you've turned your AI into a yes man. But either way, its whole job is to keep your attention. Why is that its job? So that while you're paying attention, advertisers can try to sell you shit. That's, I mean, it's the whole thing. They need a place where everybody's gathered so that every now and then somebody can be like, hey, while you guys are all here, here's some stuff to sell. Whatever that stuff may be, whether it's an idea, whether it's a product, whether it's whatever. But that is the byproduct of the level of capitalism that our consciousness is existing from, and a byproduct of the marketing era, like the Mad Men's thing, right? Like the marketing in America is this whole machine of people that exist solely to collect attention and hold it there. Um, and most people are unaware that that's what they're doing. They're giving their attention away to what? Something else, someone else, outsourcing their sovereignty, creating an identity in someone else, rather than like, holding it to themselves, or at least being aware that their attention is the highest form of currency. And where are they paying it?
Yes, and you reminded me of a question that I had on my thing. Let me see. Let me find it. There's a lot of questions here. The topic of energetic currency would be great, Nick. Not too familiar with it myself. Thank you. It's from Caesar.
Yeah.
Caesar, this is what we're talking about.
Holy shit. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, render unto God that which is God's, right? Like when Jesus clearly gave us the separation of church and state. And this is like a blending place, right? Like politics at the human level is Caesar, right? Like it is worldly matters. It's practical, economical, and foreign policy at a large scale. But it's also a spiritual matter, right? Like, so how are we at the individual level? How are we discerning what is practical, what is grounded, and what just needs to be tended to? And where am I disrupting what is supposed to be God's, which is my sovereignty, my own ability to stand in my light and seek discernment, and to stand in the willingness to reside in truth no matter what. It's crazy that a guy named Caesar dropped that question so perfectly.
We're in a fucking game, dude.
Yeah. The synchronicities do be sinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Energetic currency. Imagine it like this. If you're we're talking about social media and being manipulated by social media. Imagine if you're just scrolling on social media and you let, okay, I fucking love this topic. First off, imagine that you wake up each day. I'm going to go all the way to the beginning here. Imagine you're waking up each day and you can see your body as a battery, your bodies, not just your physical, but there are other bodies too, but that's for a different conversation. You have a certain amount of energy physically, and there are things in this reality that are in truth and there are things that are in falsehood. Now, when you participate in things that are in falsehood, you can say that those things take your energy. That's why it's in falsehood. It taps into the separating force of the universe. And when something's in truth, your body stays strong. This is kinesiology muscle testing. And so if you're in the presence of truth or you're participating in things that are in truth, you can imagine that your energy source is different than if you're participating in falsehood. So
Right.
you could say on one level that if you have this currency and you're spending it on things that are in truth, that's going to result in you actually getting more energy back and gaining energy to a certain extent. So there's a reciprocation field that comes back into your body, which will allow you to have more energy because you could say it from a different way. Your energy source is God. Your energy source would be
Source.
the universal intelligence. Your energy source would be source. A perfect
Right.
way to put it. And so it's not the ego or the egoic mechanisms that are shadow based that are life taking and perpetuating their own justifications through
Mhm.
your agreements. So for you to have an awareness of your currency would be to realize that if you're scrolling on social media, you're in falsehood to some level, because if you think about the root of why you're scrolling, it is more than likely some sort of unworthiness, shame, guilt, grief, fear, desire, a lower level of desire, which is craving and disappointment,
Yeah.
because you're just craving. Maybe it's anger. And so it stems from an emotion, and those emotions are in falsehood. So to spend your currency in a way that is, oh, it says we're unstable, but hopefully we're good. To spend your currency in a way that is conducive to your life would be to realize that everything has a frequency in the things that you participate in. Some of those will sustain you, some of those will give you energy, and some of those will take away energy from your body. And if you wonder how some of these geniuses, like the Nikola Tesla situation, how could he go all day, every day? How could he do this nonstop without barely any food and sustenance? And to me, it's because he was tapped into that source. He was tapped into the thing, the universal intelligence, the Tao, the essence that sustains all things. And this kind of goes into panpsychism, the idea that everything has consciousness. If everything does have consciousness, there would be basically a connection being established by you when you're in the presence of truth to that greater intelligence, and that establishment of that connection through the right hemisphere of the brain is the way that you will receive life force energy. And some people say it comes through certain areas. We don't have to get into that, but you become an antenna, not only for ideas like Nikola Tesla talked about,
Yeah.
or even Einstein talked about.
We're gonna come back to the word antenna in a second, but go ahead.
Okay,
Just want to pinpoint that.
bookmark that right there.
Yeah.
So you're coming back to that place of receiving those ideas, downloads, but also energy. So
Mhm.
currency fits in that way. A lot of people talk about receiving ideas from the intelligence, but also it's receiving actually energy. And if you want like something practical for energetic currency, Paramahansa Yogananda, who is the father of yoga in the West, talked about how there's energization exercises for you to tap into cosmic consciousness, what he called it. And you can look up on YouTube these specific exercises that you can do for free. So if you're like, well, what are exercises I can do? That's one of them. Qigong is another huge exercise. Once you realize that the force is real, once you realize it can be tapped in by the Jedi or the Sith or by anyone who becomes force sensitive, you realize that you can manipulate energy by connecting to that energy. So the currency thing is how you kind of connect to that energy, realize how it works. But Qigong is a way for you to actually control how the life force or chi moves through your body. Anyways, antenna.
In time. That was a pretty good rant. I was kind of hoping you were going to keep going with that, but the coming into oneness with the unseen forces that are evidently at play um is that's definitely a much higher level game, right? That's a higher chakra level of being versus in the root, in the groin, in the instincts, in the emotion based, moving to that area where you're perceiving and eventually literally seeing and handling what right now seems like invisibility. Seems like my hands are just waving in nothingness, but there is infinite potentiality coded into every particle around you at all times, right? Like the capacity to handle that. And I wanted to mention antenna. I just saw somebody like sharing this. I think it was on like an Instagram reel as just like a hack. And I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot. Whenever this ties into people that are like, why do my ears keep ringing? Right. Like that's like at this point, a commonly known like ascension symptom, the ear ringing thing. That's not just tinnitus. It's a different like thing. Um, but the your mind is literally an antenna. In a simple way, you can quickly, you don't, I mean, science can prove it, right? Like there are devices that demonstrate we are an electromagnetic conductor and our body has an aura, an electromagnetic field. But when I used to sell cars, like, there's all these little tricks of the trade. And one day, we were out on a big parking lot and the guy that was showing me the ropes would hold the key fob up to his chin and click the button. was like, what are you doing? He's like, well, if you hold it here, like he was like, look, nothing. If I hold it here and push it, it'll reach the car. It amplifies the range if you hold it to your mouth. He didn't know why, but literally it's because our brain is an antenna, right? Like, so if you have a device that sends a signal, and you can demonstrate this with your car if you're in a parking lot, if you're a little bit too far away for the key fob to reach it, but you hold it under in your skull and you click the button, it increases its range, right? Because the brain is an antenna. And the same thing with the ringing of the ears that has been significantly increasing for most people over the past handful of years. And a lot of people like to theorize, well, that's 5G, that's this or that. Well, either way, it's the truth. Your head is an antenna. Your brain sends and receives signals, right? And you can connect these dots to any field of science that studies these matters, or theology, mysticism, spirituality. Our capacity to connect to the unseen is an easily like witnessable event. And from that place, hopefully that will unlock a lot of doors for people that like, oh shit, my brain, I am walking around with an antenna. I'm walking around with a signal amplifier in my head. And you can easily demonstrate that with the key fob to your car. Right. Okay. So if my brain can amplify signals and receive signals, then that can be a quick, practical example that lends credence to the idea that what we're feeling and what we're thinking about is going out somewhere into the world. And it's creating these ripples that we can't see with our eyes, but it's moving through this field of infinite potentiality. And it's doing something. It's creating some sort of harmony or disharmony amongst us. In the same way, a cell phone tower and a cell phone, they're all constantly sending a signal, but it's when their signals match, do they link up, right? Like cell phones, wherever you go, they're constantly pinging, looking for a connection. So whatever we're thinking about, whatever the truth of our being is sending out a signal, looking for a match at all times. So where are we paying our attention? What is the truth? What is really going on inside of us? Because that is asking for its match to come back to us all the time. Now, is the truth that we don't know who the fuck we are or what's really going on, and deep down we're scared, so we don't look at that. We just spend our time escaping and coping and stimulating ourselves to get through the day. A big part of my 6 week program that I do with people involves the first 5 weeks is really stripping away so much stuff that people don't even realize is just habit and addiction and programming and stuff that they thought was like stuff that makes sense to do. They didn't realize it was just total programming that's been infused into them since before they came where they were aware that they're actually here. So peeling back all of the programming and getting back to the truth of who you are, which is I am, which is void of description or definition. It's too complex to be, because if you start trying to describe who I am, it's everything, right? Like it's every potentiality. I'm all that. And I'm none of that yet until I start to take form, until I like start to animate into some fashion. But I'm also all of that. Every unlimited potential that has yet to be. So a lot of times people have not had the chance to unwind themselves back to that place and sit there long enough to really feel the truth of that.
But now they will.
More and more people seem to be moving in that direction, right? Like the place where we are existing seems to be a better reflection of that, a community of equally equally interested, like-minded people. Seems to be, at least that's my experience. Things are less turbulent than they were in the past because the turbulence was part of the process, right? Like part of the birth pains. You'll see war and rumors of wars and distress in the earth. Don't worry, these are just the birth pains of the new age. There's always a disruptive process required for something to come into being, but where we're at currently, it seems like it's on its feet and walking smoothly at this point.
Well, very interesting. I don't like the term new age
Uh-huh.
because I think there's so
Jesus
much
said it. That's a quote from Jesus.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I like that point. I'm saying with the way that most people use it now, there's a
Uh-huh.
lot of BS associated with it. I
Yeah.
think there is isn't New Earth a Jesus quote too? Does he say New Earth?
The yeah, so there were not just one original manuscript of the original gospels, but effectively where he was saying that, where the disciples were like, "Hey, how do we know when you're coming back? What's it going to be like?" And he's like, it's going to be soon, but it won't be right away. There's going to be wars. You're going to hear of rumors of wars. There's going to be famines and diseases, and there's going to be troubles in the earth, like droughts and earthquakes and stuff like that. And he said, "Don't be troubled. All these things are going to come to pass. These are the birth pains of the new age." Now, if you really think about it, those same elements have never not been present around the world, right? Like all of those things he just listed have been part of the human experience forever. And he said soon, that was over 2000 years ago. So how relevant is time? So the idea that those themes are always at play and they're uncomfortable, those themes in the world aren't so much the point, it's that they create um the tension, the signals in your body to know when it's time for your effectively like your spiritual water to break, for your chrysalis to start to form and crack open and all that stuff. And those disruptions wedge us through into a next tier of peace. Once we are forced to look at each of those elements, to be willing to handle our own inner conflict as an energy that needs to be mastered, um, and sort of move through all the different ranges of the experience, and where we're like, oh, what? I don't need my identity to be tied up in that anymore. I don't need anybody else to set a schedule for me or validate or invalidate. I just know the truth, and I know I am bored with that system. And it's not for me to remain here and attempt to change the world as I see it or fix the problems that I think are problems. It's my job to realize this has been like a ninth grade classroom. And now I am graduating to 10th grade. And that curriculum at ninth grade must remain there intact so that everybody else coming through from the eighth grade will move through that ninth grade curriculum and learn those set of lessons that I am not doing anymore. I left it there. I didn't feel a need to save every problem. Um, yeah, I hope I said that correctly without attempting to like cram too many points into it. But that's the gist.
Fucking interesting, bro. Very fucking interesting. Oh, Jesus, dude. Jesus, literally. I mean, oh, Jesus, dude. Not sarcastically.
Jesucristo.
Jesus Cristo. Dude, I fucking love doing this episode with you. This has been phenomenal. I almost feel like maybe we should save these. Maybe we should make these shorter and then do more episodes,
Yeah,
because we've went like 2, 3 hours before.
we have. How long has this been?
I
It's
think
one,
we're
two,
like
3 o'clock at my time right now.
nice.
1:20. It's 1:23. 1, 2, 3. Head in
Nice.
sequence.
Here's what I want to show you. Can you tell me if you can see this? Can you see this?
Secret intelligence. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna read a little bit of you mentioned the when's Jesus
Uh,
gonna come back. So now I gotta
yeah.
talk about Jesus. We gotta talk a little bit about it and we'll save the rest for another episode. So
Okay.
this is from the book Second Coming of Christ by Yogananda. And so the way I found this was I searched Second Coming and found it in the document. So this is page 332. And the title of this little thing is Secret Intelligence. And it says, Jesus already said, Ye shall seek me and shall not find me, and where I am, thither ye cannot come. Thus Jesus prophesied about the theology intoxicated modern Christians who seek Christ in the wrong theological way and do not find him, because they do not, by meditation, lift their consciousness from the physical plane to the plane of Christ consciousness. They never reach there. Theological Christians picture Jesus Christ as limited by a form and the beauties of a human figure, but souls who identified their consciousness by meditation with the universal, omnipresent consciousness, which was manifest in Jesus Christ, behold the cosmos as the body of Christ and the energy in it as his life and the secret intelligence in it as his Christ consciousness. It is by worshiping Christ in the self-erected temple of meditation and self-realization that one can be a true Christian and be able to bring the Christ consciousness, which was in Jesus, to a quote, second coming within the devotee's own soul. Okay, then it continues on a lot more about a lot of different things. I really recommend this book, but the point is that Yogananda was big on the second coming not being Jesus actually physically returning, but the return of the consciousness level in which he reached, which we know as Christ.
Mhm.
So when I hear Jesus coming back, to me, it's the Christ within being realized within thousands and thousands of people all during this time. And people want to talk about the prophecy. Jesus is coming back. No, Christ is coming back, meaning that intelligence is going to be manifested in many, many, many people. As Jesus, the dogma is that Jesus was a person who reached this level. He was the only one. But if you read books like The Second Coming of Christ, like we just did, you find out that that's actually a inaccurate interpretation of Jesus's words given to you by scholars who have not studied these Eastern traditions to be able to interpret the esoteric meaning behind what Jesus was actually saying, which is what Paramahansa Yogananda did. And he's not the only one who is able to interpret it, but that's the idea I wanted to share around Christ consciousness.
Yeah, love it. I the note that I sent you yesterday was just when we were chatting um about the example of Christ washing the disciples' feet. This is obviously my favorite topic in the area where I probably spent the most amount of time reading and rereading and studying and looking into the origins of the words and the actual context of the original language. But the idea of Christ washing the feet of the disciples, this is the point where they have acknowledged this is the guy I'm going to follow. He's my teacher and my master. Sorry, my dog's being super needy for attention
I
right now.
see your dog
She's like,
pawing
give
at
me your hand.
you.
Yeah, watch it. She won't.
That's crazy.
I got to do what I'm told. But this is the part. It all sort of loops around until you get to this point where they're like, okay, that's the guy. I'm following him. He's the man. Still a little skeptical, right? Like I'm still not sure what's going on. But he's like washing their feet. And then one of the guys was like, no way, you're my teacher and my master. You can't wash my feet. And Jesus said, unless you let me do this for you, you'll never have eternal life. And the guy's like, well, in that case, wash my whole head and my feet and everything. And he's like, no, your feet's enough. That's fine. But the concept of this principle that's being taught right here was that once you are aware that you trust that the Christ, that feeling that we've all felt, right? Like people that have maybe they did or didn't grow up in any sort of like theological teachings, but they, you hear this with people that have had psychedelic journeys and they have felt the presence of Christ. They've felt the love of universal consciousness, right? That place of untouchability. So they've felt what Christ consciousness feels like, and they maybe don't have the like verbiage or the language to teach it, or they find later the ways in which it was talked about. But either way, once you feel the Christ, then rather than continue to mythologize and personify that thing by treating it like it's just a person, and keeping it on this pedestal, Christ says, look, I have to get you, you have to take me off this pedestal and let me wash your feet, which was at that time in Jewish culture, removing the sandals and washing the feet. That was just symbolic of undoing the past, washing away everything that you were. So that was effectively like Christ saying, hey, it's great that you think I'm the master and your teacher, but can you receive me as your servant right now? What would have to happen within you where you're like, oh, now I'm being served. Now I'm receiving, right? Like in a sense, in this exact moment, I'm higher, right? Um, and then from receiving that, what happens? You should, once that settles in and all the fear layer, am I being blasphemous? What is this? Like, let it actually be received and start to embody one's own Christ consciousness, one's own Christ likeness within themselves, and one's own unity and oneness with self as the creator, right? from that place, then what to do. And once somebody starts to realize that they're no longer working their way up to experiencing the Christ, they're embodying it. Then, if you were to reread those stories, the mythologies of what was happening, you can look at it more from the vantage point of the creator throughout these stories. What was the creator originally doing? Trying to form and shape and organize and dictate its creation into a certain way until eventually the creator has to realize all things will become as I am. I'm not going to wrestle with my creation. I'm not going to be so determined to try to get them to do what I want so much. What I'm going to do is show up equal, like a person, tell the truth, demonstrate the truth, and then say, I, the creator, surrender to the sovereign free will of you, because within you is the same divinity that I am. And as long as I'm contending with you, what does that say about me? Am I controlling? Am I stubborn? I mean, in the Old Testament, God didn't have any problem saying, I am jealous. I do evil and I make good. I am all these things. All right. So the story of Christ is where man and God become one. Man gets to a point where it's transcending humanity and showing up as a servant leader. And it's where God meets us where we're at and says, hey, just so you know, I see the best in you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to speak life into the divinity in you. And I'm here to surrender to your free will up to and including you pegging me to a tree and taking my life. And all I'm going to say is I forgive you, because right now you're not aware of what's going on, but all things will become as I am. And I'm operating from a place of from love and speaking life into the divinity of everything around me rather than trying to change everything. It'll change on its own because all things eventually become as I am, not as I make them, right? All that does is just perpetuate the tension, just like the political process, right? We just keep it going. But if somebody sits in the knowing that all things eventually will become as I am, they'll become more resolute in staying in the I amness of themselves as trying to embody the highest expression of love and truth that they can perceive it as.
And there it is. What a fucking interesting one, man. I am. It's funny because in that document, I was going to read the part above it that talks about pretty much something very similar to what you're saying.
The
So,
while we were talking, I sent you like a picture. It's a note I wrote for myself on January 5th of 2023. This is before I had even was aware that there was a spiritual talk space. You know what I mean? That there was any of this going on. I hadn't started my TikTok yet or anything. It was just a note from the last time I intentionally gave myself a lucid dream. Like before bed, I was just telling myself to have an extremely lucid dream and get some answers about stuff that was happening, and then ended up giving myself. I woke up with a fever. I was like tossing and turning and gave myself a fever dream. But you'll notice the name Nick at the bottom of that page, and I didn't know you at the time. But anyways, 2 days ago, I just found this note, and I was like, holy shit! Like to see like Nick and how that's playing out now. Anyway, it was pretty crazy. So again, synchronicity is like homeboy Caesar talking about currency, and like currency represents like render unto. That was on a coin. That was where that story came from. They like the Pharisees were trying to trick Jesus into saying we shouldn't pay taxes. And they're like, should we or shouldn't we? And he's like, hand me one of those denarius. Whose face is on this coin? And they said, Caesar. And he's like, well, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and give to God what belongs to God. Sure, pay your taxes. That's money. That's like a whole different thing. That's like at a different level of operation. But what are you doing with your energy? What are you doing with your soul every moment? Right? Like, what is your choice? Who are you choosing? Um, and that was symbolized whenever Pilate, when they were wanting to crucify him, Pilate was like, I don't think there's anything wrong with this dude. I want to let him go. He's your king. And they said, our only king is Caesar, right? Like we worship the world and money and the status quo. We put our faith in what we can see, and the existing order of things versus, yeah, Christ is our king. Christ consciousness, my own divine sovereignty, my own expression, my own self as a living expression of the Creator. That's my king, right? Um, I am. So that's sort of the metaphor that was happening in that story.
Let's fucking go, dude. We're
All right.
dropping codes here. This has been a brilliant chat, mate. And we didn't even answer 90% of the questions.
You had some good ones. Like, I mean, you asked a couple of mine from the ones you were sharing with me before we started. You had some like some of those questions could have easily become just one of those questions could have become 2 hour conversations by themselves. They were like broad topics for sure.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we should save the questions and then just fucking come back and do them again and do them again and have more episodes with different topics. I think that would be great because I feel like what ends up happening is if we do a 2, 3 hour episode, then it like gets lost in the sauce.
I think so too.
So,
Hour and a half, 2 hours is plenty of time, I would think, to ask of somebody to join us for a conversation.
boom, I think we're a little bit over an hour now, so this is perfect. Any last thoughts about anything we talked about today? You feel pretty complete with it?
Which book was that you were just reading from on that screenshot, by the way?
It's
I know
called
you've said it before, but is there a way you can like show it so that it's like,
like, can I show the cover of it?
yeah, yeah, can you show the cover of it
I don't have that
so,
one in,
so that it's screenshotable?
yeah, I don't have that one in print,
Okay.
but I can pull up a screenshot of I can pull up the cover on their website. Let me do that.
You've mentioned it probably in each podcast we've done, but yeah.
All right, you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so that's the book. Second Coming of Christ, Resurrection of Christ Within You, a revelatory commentary on the original teachings of Jesus. But yeah, there's Jürgen under there. And that's the cover. So that's the book. A little bit of a description. If you want to read a description of what it is, you can just pause the podcast and zoom in a little bit. You can see that little description we got there.
This is like the whole thing though. This is the whole reason people get stuck in like resurrect the eternal Christ within oneself, which was Jesus's whole message, which was the whole part where he's like, unless you eat me and drink my blood. And everybody's like, what are you fucking talking about? That's disgusting. He's like, you don't get it. I got to wash your feet. He's like, you've got to take me off this pedestal by keeping me as something that's external to you. And you have to ingest me, right? Like if you to put it in a way where it kind of makes sense, like picture eating me, not obviously eating my body, but until you have me in you, until you get on that day, you will understand I'm in the Father and you're in me and I'm in you. Until you get it, until you put me in you, until you accept me as not just a person that's distant on a pedestal. All that does is keep somebody fragmented. That's still outsourcing their sovereignty until it's all internalized. Anyways, it's like it was beautiful. It was right on the money, and that is where a lot of people um, end up using religion as a weapon because they're too afraid to actually do what Jesus said to do, which was like, be me. Don't be like, follow me, become me, and then you'll be one and in the Father, which you already are. You'll figure it out on your own. Until then, feel free to hang me up on this cross if that's what you think you need to do because I've made you so mad by telling you that truth. You can't tell me I'm one with God and you're one with God. That's terrible, right? Like my king is Caesar. My king is my bank account, and whoever president's running or not running right now, my king is the duality that I'm playing in. Sure, do that. Do that as long as you want. I support your free will to choose that. That was the message of choice. Kill me if you want. But if you ever don't want, there's a big open door of grace right through me into your own oneness with source. If you'll just accept that that is actually you and it has been you all along. Can you do that? A lot of people are like, I don't know. That's scary. Maybe it comes with responsibility. Maybe it's going to come with persecution for me and I don't want to do that or whatever. So that is the message. So I can't believe I haven't read that book because it seems like he sums it up quite nicely.
It's 1,000 pages.
Oh, not summed up at all.
He goes through all four gospels of Jesus and talks
Yeah.
about pretty much every word Jesus said.
Okay. So my book sums it up. My book is 70 pages to put it all.
All right, yep. And your book is called,
Ascension, Knowing God in You
all right, and that's available where?
on Amazon, Kindle, uh, iTunes, and Audible. So on my link
Yeah.
tree.
Fuck yeah, mate. We'll put that in the description. If anybody wants to check it out, we'll also put the Yogananda stuff in the description. But other than that, I think we'll call it for today. We could talk forever, and we will continue to talk forever, but it will be on another day. Sound good, mate?
Who are you voting for?
Who you vote for? Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. You know, everybody in the comment section is gonna be like, "Well,
That's the whole. They only stuck around. They want to find out who you voting for.
who you voting
Are
for, buddy?"
are you voting?
I am an undecided voter.
Okay,
Well, I'm an undecided person. I'm an undecided sovereign person.
love it.
So we'll see what happens. I think at some point I'm gonna have to reveal it more, but we'll save that for the nexteth episode. We'll see you on the next time we're doing a human game podcast. If it's your first time here, subscribe to the damn thing we're doing here. If you enjoyed this episode, we're gonna do a lot more. I'm here in Michigan. Got a nice log cabin feel in northern Michigan. We've had this log cabin in my family since the 70s, and I'm glad to be here. This is going to be kind of my base moving forward, and so I'm excited to do many more episodes with you, my friend, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. So thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, love you, brother.
Love you. We'll see you in the next episode, y'all. Peace.